I am Thomas, and I hope all is well. Today, I want to tell you a story, a true crime story that a lot of shockwaves went through New York and the nation many of years ago. And we're going to travel to the location where that happened, East Village, Avenue A and 13th Street. Avenue A and 13th Street. And kind of gives you an idea of how New York City looked back in the day. And when I say back in the day, we're talking about late 1800s, beginning 1900s. Actually, to be specific, this event happened in 1895. And the main character here is a young woman by the name of Maria Barbella. And she was actually known erroneously as Maria Barbelli at the time. But allow me to tell you her story. Now, Maria Barbella, she was born in Italy, and her family immigrated to Mulberry Bend, New York, which is Mulberry section of New York, what it's known as today, in 1892. And after living in the United States for nearly a year, Maria Barbella met a individual by the name of Domenico Cataldo, who Dominic happened to be from the same part of, the same region. Yeah, I mean, the same region of Italy. So it's like she felt that she already known him, right? Because that's like something that they have in common. And Maria worked in a factory, and every day she would pass by Cataldo's shoe shine booth. And there is a picture of Mr. Cataldo. Obviously, Maria really, from this drawing, really, she gave a lot of leniency towards in the looks department, right? Not that it matters or anything. But nonetheless, he had a shoe shine booth to Dominic. And they spent lots of time together, but the meetings were kept a secret from Mikao Barbella. And that's Maria's overprotective father. And Maria's father found out about Domenico, and he had forbidden Maria from ever seeing or speaking to him again. But Mr. Cataldo there, well, he did not take no for an answer easily, and he continued to pursue Maria until she finally gave in and agreed to meet with him again. So I guess we're now fast forwarding a couple of months, because this is kind of where the story picks up. Maria finally gives in. And, them and Domenico are, dating. And one day, Mr. Domenico here, he took Maria to a boarding house where he apparently seemingly drugged her with the drink he bought her and took advantage of her. This is a picture of Maria. Now, because of Maria's, and this is many years ago, this is the late 1800s, and because of Maria's very strong morals about intimacy and marriage, Maria said that they would have to get married to make everything right. Again, I know this is a, different world back then. And Domenico, well, the slime ball, he's already a slime ball. But, he said, you know what? Okay, I will marry you. Just give me a couple of months and I will marry you. But, the months go on and they never got married. Guess why? Come on. It's on the tip of your tongue. All right, come on. Do you know what the answer is? If you said because he's married. That's right. He was already married to a woman in Italy with whom he already had children with. Well, a woman he already had children. So now, being the stand-up individual that Mr. Domenico here was, and I cough, he said that, you know what, I got to go back to Italy now, and I cannot marry you, leaving Maria quite devastated. Now, keep in mind, obviously, before all of this, Domenico, he would, an example, he would show like a passport, like a passport savings book or a savings account, and he would show this to Maria, and it had like a $400 deposit, I guess, and that would he would use to validate that he would indeed marry her and that he's not lying and he's being truthful, and they're going to make it work that way. Maria could in her mind, just forgive Domenico, I guess, for lack of a better word, as to what had happened. So Maria, tells her mother what happened and what Domenico said. Listen, I know what we're thinking. Domenico is nothing to write home about, just on looks alone and personality, mentality. But you got to keep this, got to realize this was a different time back then, and, involving, intimacy and marriage and so on and so forth. So Maria and her mother, they confronted Domenico in a bar, and I'm leading you guys to that intersection of where this happened many of years ago. They go into the bar where he was playing cards, and her mother, Maria's mother, demanded that he marry Maria. Domenico said that he might be persuaded to marry her. Now, keep in mind, he already said that he has a family in Italy, but he will marry Maria if the family paid him $200. And Maria's mother explained, listen, we don't have that type of money. And Domenico, well, stand-up gentleman that he said that he is, he laughed and he laughed at Maria and her mother, and he said, well, quote unquote, and these are his last words, only pigs marry. And Maria stabbed him. Just like that. April 27th, 1895. A headline read in the New York Times, a young woman, Maria Barbella, cuts Domenico Cataldo's throat. Oh, and Maria and Domenico had been arguing, and Domenico went to play his cards at a bar, 2 doors down, Mancuso's, from, where the argument started. And Maria, well, as this happened, before she cut his throat, she put her hand on his shoulder, and as he tried to push her away, Maria slashed his throat with a straight razor. Cutting his throat, Domenico ran into the street. Blood gushing blood ran through a crowd of horrified bystanders. Then he fell to the sidewalk, and well, he died. Maria went home, changed out of her bloody clothes, but it did not take the police long to find her. And when they did arrested her, she said in broken English, "Me take his blood, so he no take mine. Say me pig Mary." And with that, the New York City Police, they took her to New York's Tombs prison.
Now, Maria was 27 at the time of the murder. She had spent 2.5 months in the Tombs and was visited every day by a family member. At that time, a little-known attorney, Amos Evans, and Henry Sedgwick, on his first case, were appointed her case. Rather, on his first case, well, you get it. She did not see the lawyers again. Very, very interesting. She did not see her lawyers again now until she appeared in court on July 11th. So one time she was allowed to meet with her attorneys. And on that day, she wore a dress that she had made while in prison. It was a dark gray felt hat that was trimmed with orange flowers and feathers, according to reporters. Now, as far as the jury that was selected, do you want to take a guess? Do you want to take a gamble of the jury that was selected? Well, it was 12 men. 12 men that were selected, and none of them were Italian. The judge in the case was John Goff. Maria's confession was read by the agent who took it, John O'Rourke of the East 5th Street Police. It read in part, she admitted having entered the bar while Domenico was playing cards. Then after having grasped the man by the hair and pulled his head back, she had cut his throat. Then she had ran away. Domenico ran after her, but almost immediately he had fallen to the ground dead. The woman confessed that she had been relieved. She was relieved when she saw him fall because she was afraid of him. In his deposition, Police Officer O'Reilly, he had stated, "I went immediately to Miss Barbella's apartment where, hidden behind a stool, I found a bloody cotton dress." The deputy coroner, John Huber, testified that Domenico had died from a loss of blood from a neck wound caused by the 6-inch long knife Maria had used to stab him. Now, the defense used by Maria's lawyers was that Domenico made a practice of seducing women with false promises and that Maria was one of his victims. Domenico was portrayed as a gambler, a libertarian of the worst kind. Not for nothing. He does kind of sound like a, well, you know it, capital D. I'll let you figure out the rest what that word could mean. And here we are kind of at the intersection of where all of this happened. I'm going to give you guys a better view here as I'm going to cross the street. But, back to the case. The judge, after hearing the defense, he stated that from evidence, it appeared that Maria had acted in a fully conscious manner. He asked the jury not to have mercy on Maria. He said, "Your verdict must be an example of of justice. A jury must not concern itself with mercy. And here we are, kind of the intersection of where this all happened many, many of years ago. How it looks modern day now. The law does not distinguish between the sexes. The fragility of the female sex is sometimes involved to excuse savage crimes. This is what the judge said back then. We cannot publicly proclaim a woman not guilty of killing a man solely because this man has promised marriage and then he had changed his mind. And with that being said, in less than 45 minutes, the jury reached their verdict. Guilty of murder in the first degree. Maria Barbella, now this is where the story kind of becomes a little bit sketchy here, became the first woman in the U.S. to be convicted of murder since the electric chair became the instrument of capital punishment. You know, and now I've heard anywhere from whether it was the first or the second or even the third. So the number kind of just changes. July 18th, 1895, Judge Goff sentenced Maria to death. Execution by electricity. Maria was transferred to Sing Sing prison, the first female convict held there in 18 years and the first one on death row. And she was a model prisoner. Her case at this point now, from New York, reached news nationwide, countrywide, everywhere it was talked about. And even in Italy, many people maintained that she should live. Hundreds of letters were sent to New York's governor, criticizing the state for its death sentence. Countess Cora Savaganin, I believe I'm pronouncing the name right. Well, she had traveled to Italy to assist Maria in getting an appeal. April 16th of 1896, the Court of Appeals granted or rather, based on the omission of omitted testimony during her first trial and the lack of Judge Goff's impartiality. That's the countess that helped with the appeal for Maria. A real lifesaver, to say the least, for Maria. Especially with how women were looked at, back in that time. So, Maria was transferred now from Sing Sing back to the Tombs. Maria was granted a second trial because of the judge. And the second trial lasted 24 days. And the defense at this case, they had argued that she was a person epileptic and she had mental problems because of this condition. She was found not guilty in the second trial. Now, you may ask what happened with Maria after the fact. She was found, she married an Italian immigrant. She finally got married almost a year later in 1897. In 1899, she had a son. In 1902, when they did, based on a consensus, she was living with her parents and her husband and had returned to Italy and had remarried. We fast forward again. She apparently had helped in her later on in life. One of her neighbors from a fire in her building or apartment And I believe Maria lived until the age of 81 and is buried here in New York in Calvary. Ha, I could speak English. Calvary Cemetery. I believe under the last name, the Charo, which was the name that she was married. Don't quote me on that. But a very interesting case, to say the least.
I thank you for watching this video. Again, this is I Am Thomas, East Village of New York City, Avenue A. It's a very kind of a hippie, kind of a neighborhood where a lot of young people live and hop and skip away from, Midtown Manhattan, where all those big buildings are. So, a lot of more stories to share. Please do subscribe. It will mean a lot, and I hope all is well. This has been the story of Maria Barberi.